Hey, everybody. Last week we let you know that we'd be in touch this week to unpack a little bit more what our process is going to be like as we think about meeting again in person. And the three words that we let you know were going to be part of our thinking were biblical, safe, and incremental. And we want to talk to you a little bit more about that in the coming minutes. But also, I just want to say right at the front, there are going to be many different ways of reopening and rethinking through this. And again, I just want to urge us to have a spirit of unity and charity as we consider these things. Our various businesses and churches around town and so forth are going to be opening up on different time frames, and we want to be gracious to one another as we may vary in person to person and church to church and so forth about how we're going about this process. But I'm just going to start by just sharing about what we mean by wanting to approach this in a way that's biblical.
Yeah, so the scriptures actually give us lots of different kinds of counsel and lots of different instructions that may bear on our thoughts about coming together in worship. For example, I know some are really drawn to passages like Hebrews chapter 10 that says, "Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another." And still others among us may be more compelled by passages like First Peter 2 that says, "Submit yourselves to the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as to the supreme authority or to governors." And I want to acknowledge that there is a wide spectrum of those types of opinions. But one of the opinions that matters to us is found in the book of Proverbs, in which it says that a multiplicity of counselors helps make a wise decision. And so I want to just remind you, church, of our reopening task force, these men and women, community leaders who are helping us think through not only what our rights might be as a church, but what it looks like to do things that are not just permissible, but also beneficial, and to borrow the language of Paul from 1 Corinthians 10. And so I am encouraged by the ways that our church has continued to seek to be the church in creative ways, whether that is meeting via Zoom. And there are groups that have been meeting in socially distanced ways to continue to lean into our unique identity as the church. And I want to call us, church, in the days ahead to continue to live into that calling, to exercise our spirit given gifts within the family of God. And we want to be guided more than anything else by both love for God and love for neighbor. And that leads us to the idea of wanting to approach reopening with safety in mind. And Mike's going to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. Romans 13, verse 10 says this: love does no harm to a neighbor. I just love that. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. And we want to be a people who reflects God's heart to bless the other members of our community, as well as the larger community that we are a part of. And so this is one of our aspects of thinking through this too, of wanting to approach this in a manner that's not going to do any harm both to one another and to our larger town. So we've been learning more about this from various sources, trusted sources, about the spread of COVID-19. One of the things that's become clear is that it's particularly some of the things that's traditionally marked our large group gatherings that are specifically contribute to the perpetuation of the spread. So we just want to be aware of things like how our singing might contribute to the safety of others, how gathering indoors versus outdoors, etc. So we're giving thought to this. As we think about a eventual return to corporate worship, there are just so many issues that we need to think through that relate to our safety together. And so, again, this task force that we've assigned to give some good thought to this are looking into things about hand sanitizing stations, thorough cleaning of our facilities, patterns of foot traffic in and out when we eventually meet together, when and how, where masks ought to be worn, etc. And just another layer of this is this is not just for our adults. We're also thinking through how children and youth are affected. So there's just a lot of things in the area of safety we want to give good thought to.
Which then leads naturally to the idea that our return to corporate worship will, in fact, be incremental. And if you think of it as getting light on in a room, I think many of us might hope that It's simply as easy as walking in the room and flipping a switch when we think about returning to corporate worship. But it's probably more beneficial to think of the metaphor of a dimmer that gets turned up slowly and in stages. And that's how we are thinking about what it might look like to return to congregational worship. Many of you may have seen the new guidelines that came out from the California Department of Public Health this past weekend. And specific to its ideas on religious gatherings returning, you'll notice that even that has an incremental idea embedded in it. The indoor capacity right now is capped at 1/4 of a building's capacity, or 100 people, whichever is the smaller of those two numbers. And so even the state regulations are in an incremental and phased approach. And so it's obviously for us not yet a possibility to return full scale to the kind of worship experience we were having even as recently as early March. We are excited to explore various possibilities and are hard at work doing that. Many of you have suggested things to us related to gathering outdoors or limiting seating or having staggered arrival times. Thank you for your suggestions. You need to know we're considering any and all of those. We're considering how to make it possible for home groups to gather even on Sundays to participate in the digital content that we're producing. For now, church, I want you to know that it is our hope that we would be able to return to something live and in person and outdoors by the middle of June. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're aiming towards. More details to come on that, obviously, but we are as excited as anybody to return to corporate worship, but we want to do so in a way that is indeed biblical, safe, and incremental.